Oh, we're live. How about that? All right, let me see. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Lane, and I am a young adult librarian at the O'Neill Library in Crestline Village. And this is the second in a three-part series that we're doing. We received a grant from the Library of America for a program called Lift Every Voice. And it's the aim of it is to elevate African American voices in American libraries, and we are so extremely lucky to have Ashley M. Jones with us, and she tonight is going to do The Prescription is Poetry. And so people have submitted thoughts, concerns, worries, woes, triumphs, and she's going to read poetry based on that. So Ashley has her third book of poetry will be coming out in 2021, and she can speak to that. We'll have a short Q&A after the main program is over. Y'all enjoy.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Hello, everybody. As Matt said, I'm Ashley Jones, and I'm very excited to do this second event during my term as the O'Neill Library's Lift Every Voice Scholar. So this event we wanted to do because all of us are sort of suffering, ailing, trying to make sense of things. And one thing that I use in my life to sort of fix things that are wrong, or at least address them or use them as a balm, is poetry. And so what I'm going to do is read each of the questions that have been submitted, and I will read a poem that goes along, or that I think goes along with the question. If these were your questions, I certainly hope these poems provide something for you. And of course, we're going to have that Q&A at the end. So I want to jump right in to the first submission that we got. And if you see me looking off to the side, I have my notes over here. So just in case that's disorienting, that's what I'm doing. But the first submission was, this person wanted to know something about living, really living. What does it mean to have a life? And what are all the ways that fear sabotages us from having the one that we want? Now, this one sort of stumped me a little bit as I was looking for poems. And I tried to think, okay, what is a poem that tells me about ways to squash fear, ways to live my fullest, most fearless life? And of course, I landed on my favorite poet, Lucille Clifton. And I did my best not to make this a Clifton poetry hour, although that would be equally as beneficial to everyone because she is amazing. But I wanted to read this poem in response to that question because I think it talks about a thing that can stop us from living our most fearless life, which is perhaps a lack of faith. You can take that word faith in many ways. It can be a lack of faith in a higher power that will help you through those hard times. It could be a lack of faith in yourself that you can make it, past those fears. But this poem is called The Lesson of the Falling Leaves by Lucille Clifton. The leaves believe such letting go is love. Such love is faith. Such faith is grace. Such grace is God. I agree with the leaves. One of my favorite pieces, honestly. It's so short, but in true Clifton style, even though it is a very short poem, it contains so much. And I love that she uses something as seemingly simple as a falling leaf to show us that letting go, whether that's of fear or of relationships or whatever, letting go is actually, a powerful thing. It is a godly thing. It is a faith-filled thing, a grace-filled thing. All right. So I'm going to move on to the next question that was submitted. And it says they want to know something about how to find courage in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. So although I said this wasn't going to be a Lucille Clifton poetry hour, you are going to get another Lucille Clifton poem, which I think is a gift. So when I think about, finding courage in the face of insurmountable odds, I think about my own life as a Black woman in the Deep South. There's a lot of odds there that are seemingly insurmountable. And, there are many, many sources of strength that I pull on to get over those odds or to fight through. And this poem that I'm going to read is one that is very well known. Many of you have probably already heard this piece, but it's a piece that really makes me think about how much power there is in myself, but also in the fact that I can survive each day. Each day's survival, each hour's or minute's survival is something to celebrate. Just making it from minute 1 to minute 2, that can be an insurmountable odd. And we are, overcoming that every single day. I think it's important to think about things in those terms, at least for me, especially during this pandemic. Just celebrating the fact that I made it from 1 hour to the next, 1 day to the next, 1 meal to the next, has really helped me to combat a lot of anxiety, depression, just bad feeling that I've had during this time. So this is Won't You Celebrate With Me by Lucille Clifton. Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? I had no model. Born in Babylon, both non-white and woman, what did I see to be except myself? I made it up here on this bridge between starshine and clay, my one hand holding tight my other hand. Come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. It's those last 3 lines that really stick with you. Something every day has tried to kill me and has failed. That is a daily celebration that I think we all, should practice in these times, of course, when there is the very real threat of a deadly virus, but just any day, with or without a pandemic, there are forces that may try to bring you down, kill you metaphorically, figuratively or literally. And that survival is quite a celebration. Okay. I have to say it's strange to not know what y'all are saying or thinking. So I'm just going to imagine that y'all are, clapping and enjoying this presentation. And if you're on Facebook, you can, comment, and I'll be able to see that in real time over here on StreamYard. So let's keep moving. I'm actually going to get some of my own poetry out. The next thing that was submitted was Wanderlust. And I wasn't really sure what I had in my back pocket that actually had to do with wanderlust or, traveling, wanting to travel, that kind of thing. So I chose 2 poems that I'll read that have to do with some sort of travel. Maybe not exactly what was meant by wanderlust. I mean, in these poems, I'm traveling from one side of Birmingham to another, but still traveling. And this first one I'm going to read is from my first book, which maybe you can see, Magic City Gospel. And it's set back when I was a little kid, traveling from my grandma Ola's house back home, and my desire to just make it to that destination of home. It's called Sam Cooke Sings to Me When I Am Afraid. Sam Cooke plays on the cassette deck in our Nissan Sentra. I am strapped like a parachuter in my booster seat. It is Saturday night. We are traveling from Grandma's house in Bessemer, having waited until the night's third episode of Walker, Texas Ranger to leave for home. I am scared because I am not touching my mother. Sam Cooke is crooning about a party or a lost love or a change coming, and I'm afraid to die. Tonight, Alabama doesn't feel like home. It is too dark to see, and the alleys beckon our little car to them. Dad knows all the shortcuts because he's a fireman, and I wish so hard for the interstate with lights and its fast homeward promise. I wish for our little home and all my toys, even the ones that scare me at night. I wish for morning, when I will eat collard greens and cornbread with Mom. I wish for playtime with Monique and our blue couch that is a jungle, that is Pride Rock, that is a spaceship. Sam Cooke is painfully singing. He's screaming. I can barely breathe behind all these straps. I am straitjacketed and trying to understand the hurt in Sam Cooke's voice. And why does Grandma never get up from her easy chair? Why does she look out at us like we are this night, like we are something she will never quite touch? Even when she laughs, why does she still look sad? Why have we not made it home yet? If I close my eyes and reach for sleep, can I make us teleport home? Sam Cooke, give me the answers instead of your steely wail. I can remember that pretty vividly, honestly, even though I was young, being strapped in my little booster seat. And I do remember just being so afraid of the night and wanting to get home where I knew it was safe and where the nighttime couldn't gobble us up. So I wanted to do another one on this topic, just in case that one didn't quite do the trick. I have another one about traveling. And this one is also in Alabama. So again, it's not, traveling across oceans and things like that. But this is one of my favorite poems, actually, because I remember this moment also quite vividly. It happened on 4th of July weekend a few years back. And I saw something on the highway as I was speeding back home. I had gone to my house to pick up some shoes I had ordered. I'm kind of a shoeaholic. If you know me, you know that I'm very into shoes. But I was speeding back to get back home so I could eat some barbecue with my family. And I saw this amazing thing that I had to write about. To the Black man popping a wheelie on Interstate 59 North on 4th of July weekend. America, almost independent for its 240th year, is an interstate highway in Birmingham, where I'm speeding back to my parents' house, where the roads are clear because God blessed America, or maybe it's just because there's beer and tiny explosions in every backyard, campy novelty t-shirts for miles. But right now, America is you, up on your hind wheel, you straddling the motorcycle, hips so open they're almost unhinged. It's you, gun strapped to one leg, keys strapped to the other. You with your black butt crack flying open in the wind, legs spread eagle, legs spread black eagle, swiveling right and left like the lane is all yours as far as the eye can see. I move my car to your lane just to catch a speck of your sweat, glean some of the cool from the air passing over your helmet, under your billowing shirt. I wonder, does this make us more free? You, the empty road, your blackness making room for itself here, taking up space, willing us to follow or get out of the way. Even here, where freedom from the British meant, pick some more cotton, boy. We're ready for dinner, gal. Don't you know you're mine? Open your legs. Tony, Tony, Tony is playing from my iPhone, filling the car with It Never Rains, and it isn't. It's not quite dark yet. The sun still sits in the middle of the sky. And I think you might feel me gaining on you because you turn your head just so. Once, twice, 3 times, then you're off. The lane divisions dissolving under your diagonal path toward the airport, where I'm more than convinced you'll slip onto the runway and take off into the air, sprout black feathers and eclipse the setting sun. Okay. So we're going to keep it moving. Oh, I see there's some comments here. Oh, yay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for telling me that you are clapping and that you're enjoying the poems. Fantastic. Okay, so we're going to keep moving to the next submission. Someone submitted not applicable, which I know that they didn't mean that to be the request, but we thought it would be cool for me to respond to that too. So if you also are not applicable, I just chose a poem that, I don't know, just kind of came to my mind. I took this as like a wild card sort of thing. So when I think about wild card, I always think about the poet Harriet Mullen, who I believe is actually from Alabama. Somebody can fact check me on that, but I'm fairly certain that that is where she's from. And she has this great book, Sleeping with the Dictionary, which everybody should read. It's really fantastic. She does a lot of interesting things with wordplay. You've heard of the Oulipo or the N+7, poetry style. She does a lot of that. And this poem is from that book, and it's called Elliptical. And I chose it because it's sort of a strange poem in that it never exactly says the thing that it is saying, but you know what it's saying perfectly well. So I thought it might be interesting to read it. It's called Elliptical, as I said. They just can't seem to, they should try harder to. They ought to be more, we all wish they weren't so. They never, they always, sometimes they, once in a while they. However, it is obvious that their overall tendency has been, the consequences of which have been, they don't appear to understand that if only they would make an effort to, but we know how difficult it is for them to. Many of them remain unaware of. Some who should know better simply refuse to. Of course, their perspective has been limited by. On the other hand, they obviously feel entitled to. Certainly, we can't forget that they, nor can it be denied that they, we know that this has had an enormous impact on their, nevertheless, their behavior strikes us as our interactions unfortunately have been, and there's ... in between all of those pauses, I should have said. That's why it's called Elliptical. But I love that poem because to me, this poem is talking about how some people may talk about Black people, theorizing on why we are the way we are, or why we are undesirable to some. But it never explicitly says those things. It just talks around it. But most readers, when they read it, can zero in on what it is she's talking about. So that was one wild card. And I also was going to read one of mine to go with this, which sort of pairs well with this poem because it also does some wordplay, grammar-y stuff. And this poem is written entirely in the subjunctive tense. And I cannot take credit for that as a prompt. I got this prompt from my friend Monica Sook, who is a fantastic poet, whose work you should definitely read. But she was at the Kenyon Writers Workshop, I guess it's last summer. And she took a workshop from Carl Phillips, another fantastic poet, and he gave the prompt to write a poem only in the subjunctive tense. And so I thought, what a great opportunity for me to try to erase a memory from my mind. And so this is Summer Vacation in the subjunctive. If I were a woman, if I were a wanted woman, if I were a woman with soft fingers, if I were on a beach with a man, if he was a man, if a man can be a man before he acts like a man, if I were on a beach with that man and he held my hand, if I liked my hand being held, even if it was held at the wrong angle, if my wrist was ringing in pain, but I kept it there, if my heart were held wrong, like my hand, if I kept it there, if I was kept in pain, if I were pain, if I were a woman, if I were a woman before I was a woman, if I were a woman who knew her body like a woman knows her body, if a woman knew, if I knew, if I were on a beach with that man, if this time that man dissolved into sand, if the sand became hot under my feet, but my feet were gold, if a woman were made of sun, if I were made of sun, if I burned the world around me until it shone beautiful and brown, if this burning was called healing, if the healing made light. Okay, so again, like I said, I thought that sort of fit because it's using some interesting grammar stuff. And I think it plays interestingly off of Elliptical by Harriet Mullen. Okie dokie. Okay, yeah, I'm excited for this one. So the next request says, how do we keep the momentum of the quest for social justice when we can't be together safely? Well, I think this is a good question because a lot of people are talking about how this summer's activities hopefully are not, happening and then will be over, a trend, maybe you could say. We're hoping that it's not a trend. And I will say that before I read these poems that I think speak to this question, just to this person who asked it, anyone else who has that question, how to keep the momentum going, I think to recognize that the quest for social justice has been going on for a very long time. And if you are new to it, that doesn't mean that it just started, if that makes any sense. It's been going on for a long time. And so to keep the momentum going, I think it relies on individuals to remain committed to it. It doesn't have to be, some huge, grand gesture that you do, but you can fight within your communities. You can have conversations with people. You can have conversations with yourself and with your family. You can donate to causes that are supporting liberation. You can step in when you see something happening that shouldn't be happening. You can check in on your community members to make sure everyone's fed and housed and taken care of. Even if we can't be in the same room together, there are lots of ways to support that go beyond, just maybe calling to check in on someone, or even go beyond just donating to a cause. You can do a lot of things. You can educate yourself. That's also really important to learn more about what's happening. And so for these poems that I chose, I thought about pieces that just kind of make you think and help you to do some self-reflection on the things that you can do within your own life, your own mind, your own body, etc. So this is one of my favorite pieces, which I think is maybe like internet popular at this point. People share it a lot. But this is one of the pieces that I have hanging on my door, my classroom door at school, because I think it's just something that everyone should think about. And it's by Nikki Giovanni, who probably needs no introduction. I feel like everybody has to know about Nikki Giovanni. She's a staple in American literature. And this is her poem, Allowables. I killed a spider, not a murderous brown recluse, nor even a black widow. And if the truth were told, this was only a small sort of papery spider who should have run when I picked up the book, but she didn't. And she scared me, and I smashed her. I don't think I'm allowed to kill something because I am frightened. Okay. Love that poem. I mean, I definitely am still on my own journey with bugs and murdering bugs. I'm on my journey with that. But the sentiment, I think, is something that all of us can apply to our lives. especially when we're thinking about, obviously, police brutality, but you can also think about, just the way that we are afraid of each other. Killing, of course, does mean death, but it also means other types of killing. Like, a part of me, dies a little when I see, someone looking at me as if I'm a threat just because I'm a Black person. Or if I think about, how afraid I might be for my little brother to put his hands in his pockets in the store, a little part of you dies then. And so I think others, or all of us, can think about the ways in which we can stop inflicting that kind of death on each other. And of course, the other kind of death too. We shouldn't be doing that either. So I thought to pair with that, and I'm looking at my time to make sure I'm still on track, and I think that I am. I wanted to share a piece of my own that I think also speaks to this issue. And it goes along with this idea of just reflecting on yourself and the things that you say or do that could impact someone negatively. That's a part of social justice as well, that I think we sometimes forget. Microaggressions are also something that we need to eradicate, as well as all the other forms of systemic oppression. So this is sort of a long one, so tuck in, everybody. But this poem is one that I wrote after the last AWP that I attended in person in Portland, Oregon. Excuse me. It's called, "I Find the Earring That Broke Loose from My Ear the night a white woman told me the world would always save her. I remember that earring made me feel so free, so full of beauty, the kind that you might notice. Beauty that could make my shoulders glow. I remember her face, a light with a devious curiosity in the porch light of the house party, that party in that city which slathered a film over its racism, with clean streets and yard signs proclaiming inclusion. That city in that American state, which legally excluded Black residents in 1844, which entered the Union big, proud, and white. Does it matter that this woman was not evil, did not send bombs to kill children in a far-off country, did not buy or sell a single slave? Picking up the earring, unwearable until I find another hook on which to hang it from my ear, I remember again the words and their cool sting. I'm a white woman. People protect us. Does it matter what I said to invite these words? Does it matter that I did not invite these words? Does it matter that she thought this was a joke, a sign that she was on the right side, a way to pass a moment under the porch light? I've been thinking about intention, how I'm always asked to consider how good a person is, what they meant versus what they said. I think about the man who called me colored at a hotel in 2019. I think about the N-word out of a white person's mouth, about erasure. I wonder about the road to hell, which they say is paved in these same intentions, good. George Zimmerman intended to protect his sidewalk from Trayvon's body, invasively alive. George Washington intended to protect America from Britain's oppression, never mind those oppressed Black bodies. Yes, I am weaving a rope between George Zimmerman and George Washington. Yes, I am saying it. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of white supremacy. When she said it, my face could barely twist into anything but fatigue. I am tired over and over again of being told I am not human enough to matter. The white poet rages against me on Facebook. Maybe he imagines my blood against his ivory tower. Maybe he imagines the many bricks my foremothers and fathers built. Lucille, Phyllis, Gwendolyn, Paul, Lawrence, Langston, Sonia, Maya, Nikki, tumbling at the flick of his well-educated thumb. Is even my degree a different color, relegated to the back of a bus, a book? The business of poetry so thick with privilege, so smothered in the rust of its old gates. How can you breathe among all that rot, On the news, the man they call president tells us to go back from where we came. I think of all the lost ones thrown over boats, the ones locked away in cages, the ones here, sitting as American as the day is long and still called wrong. The earring says, I once was lost when I find it, tells me it can be repaired. It is an earring of the struggle. It wants that ear it once called home. It wants to touch my brown skin and reflect it in its orbiting gold. I look for my pliers, my jewelry kit. The work is always the thing that makes us whole again. Okay. So I'm going to move to the next topic. And again, I do hope these are helpful to y'all out there in Facebook land or YouTube land or wherever it is that you encounter this video live or afterward. But I'm going to go to the next question, which is, thank you, Laura, which is, how do we learn to trust each other when emotions are high and it feels like all people are in conflict? Well, I decided to go to Gwendolyn Brooks for this poem answer or poem prescription with a piece that sort of reaffirms the ways that we can trust each other because we know that we are all suffering in a similar way. You know, one part of resolving conflict is developing empathy for others. I think that's really important for all of us to do. We try to emphasize that with students, but I think adults also need to relearn how to empathize with others, how to realize that all of us have issues and that sometimes our actions are deeper than just those actions, if that makes any sense. Which kind of goes back to the last poem that I read. And even with the spider, the action of killing the spider may seem like, oh, that's normal to do. And if you take that metaphorically, the action of this woman making this joke at that party may seem like, oh, just a joke. But the ramifications of that are a little bit more intense. And if empathy was involved in either of those situations, the conflict could have more easily, I think, been resolved. So anyway, let me read this poem because Gwendolyn Brooks says things perhaps better than I can. This is a poem called Infirm. Everybody here is infirm. Everybody here is infirm. Oh, mend me, Lord. Today I say to them, Lord, look, I am beautiful, beautiful with my wing that is wounded, my eye that is bonded, my ear not funded, or my walk all a wobble. I'm enough to be beautiful. You are beautiful too. Right, one of my favorite poems, truly. I have this one up on my classroom door as well, not only for the reminder of my own beauty in spite of any imperfections or feelings or whatever, but also, again, to reemphasize empathy, because finding the beauty in your own imperfections or your own whatever, I think will allow you to see that in others so that when you encounter them, you're encountering them with a lot more love. And that's definitely going to help us as we move through this political moment. And it's just helpful in life in general. If you're not already practicing radical empathy to yourself and to others, I think you should try because it definitely, changes and in some cases saves lives. So we're down to our last two requests, and then we will, of course, open it up for question and answer. So this penultimate request says, I'd like a poem that celebrates self, uniqueness, and independence. Physical distancing is really lonely, so a poem that has a positive perspective on being alone would be good. Okay, so I went back into my archives here, and The last few poems actually are from that book that Matt mentioned that's coming out next October. It's called Reparations Now from Hub City Press. And let me find the poem. There it is. Okay. So I thought of this poem that I wrote in response to this request, because this poem attempts to celebrate everything, which does include certain pains that we have or uncomfortable situations. And I thought of that when I thought about being physically distant from people, being lonely, just the loneliness of this moment. I try to go back to this feeling of celebrating the divinity in everything, including pain, including being alone, and some of these feelings that we're feeling. And also it celebrates self and uniqueness because I'm celebrating everything about myself because it is also divine. So this is called God Made My Whole Body. God made my whole body and the way it moves and the way it shakes and jiggles and plops. And God made my smile and the 1,000 tears that fall from my eyes. God made the sun and the moon and the leaf held loosely in my godson's perfect little hand. And God made the summer breeze and the guitar Ron Isley crooned over. And God made the grass and the bugs and the dogs and the trees. And God made all of our bodies to make waste. And God made even the waste that lives in us. And God made the way the world spins and the way it will shake us right off if we don't act right. And God made the rivers which make it possible for us to drink. And God made the clouds which hold the rain. And God made the birds which fly and the wolves that howl. God made the folds of my brain and the thoughts that burrow there. God made my belly, my uterus, and all the little eggs which might become children. God made the doubt that rests there, like bubbling gas. God made the silence I wrap around myself some nights, alone. God made the music we sing and the music we hate. God made the ears which help us stay balanced, help us to hear what people say behind our backs and in front of them. God made sweet potato pie and aunties and mamas who know how to add just enough nutmeg. God made my whole body. And God made my grandma and her gold tooth. And God made my grandma and her curly wig. And God made my grandma I didn't know. And God made my grandpa who was a ghost and my grandpa who was a terror. God made fear and the way it slices us up thin and flimsy. God made the way a hand quivers before it strikes. God made pain. God made the blood which runs and keeps us running. God made an everlasting red. Okay. And I recognize that with some of my selections, I'm kind of taking poetic license, but I am a poet after all. So that's what I do. The prescriptions will be in the ballpark of what you were hoping for, and maybe we'll give you something you didn't expect. Okay, so we've made it to our last request, and it is about remaining connected to others. So I immediately, when I read this request, thought of this poem that I wrote recently that is sort of comical, but maybe is not all that comical in traditional Ashley style. It always kind of goes dark a little bit, but it talks about remaining connected to others and maybe an unconventional way that I have once done that. So the poem that I'm going to read, I wrote it while I was on a plane, going somewhere very far away from home to do a reading or something. And I found myself missing my family a lot. And so I got this idea, since I couldn't be connected to them physically in that moment, because I was on a plane going somewhere, I thought, let me just watch all the home security camera footage that I have on my phone through the app that I have that's connected to my parents' house cameras. And I mean, that's like a super weird thing to do. I totally understand that that is strange. But when you feel isolated or lonely and unconnected physically from people that you love, at least I have found that I tend to do strange things to make that connection sort of happen. So I did it by looking at the security camera footage. And so I wrote this poem thinking about that, but also thinking about how I could possibly remain connected to my family in a future in which maybe we aren't all here on Earth as well. Okay, home security. "2,300 miles away from home, and I'm watching the tiny camera attached to the back of my parents' house. Brother dragging the black trash bin to the curb. Sisters hum to the back door with her key and bag in hand. The breaths of our quiet house. I've been thinking lately about time, how it will come for me and my family, will steal these bones, the flesh that guards like a house. I've been thinking about getting older, the way it seems like some years pass quick as a snap, my life between two fingers, my body an aging house, the cracks and creaks down the halls. How did I become so old that I can start to see the end of this horizon? My mind a house full of impending pain, imminent pain. My father's face a tomb of tears at his mother's grave. My mother's sighs to the Greensboro house, now emptied of my grandmother's body. The way a headstone smiles, come now. Did you think you'd really live forever? On the home security camera, my house looks indestructible, the cars unmoving, as if everyone has come home to stay. Looking at them walk in and out of the house, my parents and my siblings look something like strangers, how the camera's dumb eye can't capture memory, just pixels and pigments. It can't keep my house from becoming a pile of wood and shingled crumb. Can't keep those living in it from dissolving into darkness, dirt, the big house I imagine as heaven. Maybe then my angel parents wave me home from their golden porch. They say, Ashley, we've been waiting. Come on in the house. Well, that concludes our requests. And again, I do hope that the poems that I chose gave y'all something, whether it was the exact thing that you may have intended or something new and also useful. Either way, hopefully you got something out of it. And I think right now we're going to open it up for questions, I believe. So if you have a question or a comment or whatever it is that you'd like to say, you can write that in the comments of the live video on Facebook, and I should be able to see it over here. And Matt, if you see anything that I don't see, please do let me know also. I do wonder if anyone who is watching was a person who submitted a question. And if you are, it would be nice to know what you thought about my selection. Oh, there's a question here. When and where did you first publish? I guess maybe you mean traditional publishing, because my first publishing experience was way back in elementary school. Our teachers had us to write books and we got to, quote, publish them. But my first publication, so to speak, had to be, well, outside of ASFA, I went to the School of Fine Arts for high school and we have a literary magazine there. So I was published in that. But beyond that, I believe my first adult publication was in the Aura Literary Arts Review at UAB, actually. And that happened when I was a freshman in college. So what was that, 2008, I want to say, is when I was first published as a grown-up. Other questions or comments? Thank you, Jan, for that gratitude. Appreciate that. Yeah, Aura was fantastic. I was lucky enough to work for Aura and eventually edit Aura for a little while I was in college. And it was a really great experience, learning about the editing process and just getting to publish people is always really fun. I mean, reading through all the slush pile, not necessarily fun, but getting the chance to publish people, super rewarding and super fun. Any other questions from the audience? And you know, it's so funny. I just thought I've been training for staring into a silent screen all semester, teaching remotely, which is definitely hours of, staring into silence. Okay, I see that request for another poem, but I see a really long comment that I'd like to read first. Jamie says, this is perhaps an odd and I hope not offensive question. I hope not either. In the past, and especially this year, I try to put myself in the position of a Black person or minority when viewing some current events. And whenever I do this, I get overwhelmingly angry. Do you feel angry? How do you deal with that anger? It's a sincere question. I feel I would be angry all the time. Thank you for your beautiful poetry that cuts to the quick of things. Thank you, Jamie, for that question. And actually, I think a way to answer that, for one, yes, I do get angry quite often, actually. It is a dizzying experience to see some of these things that happen or to experience things also, every single day. Like, it's traumatizing, honestly, which is horrible because being Black is really a fantastic thing. I'm very glad that I'm Black. It's amazing. We're a wonderful people. And it is definitely angering to see people disrespect us and, kill us and. But I think it was Sonia Sanchez who said something to the effect of, if Black people didn't have poetry, we would be burning everything down. And what I take that to mean is that for me, I am using art as a method of, maybe coping is the word, but art definitely helps me to feel something else. Like, I still feel angry, but I do also feel a certain power in being able to channel that anger into my poetry and read it to people. And maybe they will have a shift of opinion because of what I've written. But it also makes me feel like I have a voice that can be heard, because sometimes in these situations, you feel like you're totally silenced and like what you have to say is not listened to. And for me with art, it makes me feel like finally someone is going to hear what I'm saying. And I hope that is true. But yeah, I definitely think I was saying earlier about empathy. Part of that is, as you said, Jamie, putting yourself in the position of someone who is, in this case, oppressed. Especially if you've never had to think about that before in your life, taking a moment to consider what somebody else has lived through or what they are living through can definitely give you a new perspective. And I think about a lot, what we could do to retaliate as Black people. Like, the amount of things that have been done to us is incredible. And the fact that we haven't, for example, just burned everything down, I think is remarkable. And I'm going to leave that at that, because this is not the let's talk about our anger hour, because I could go on. I definitely could, but I really do appreciate that question, Jamie. Let's see. Ojan says she's an alum. Yeah, Bob Collins was also one of my professors. Yeah, he's great. Oh, and then you wanted me to read, the O'Neill Library wants me to read another piece from the new collection. Let's see, what might be fun to read. Let's see here. I think I'll read a nice, happy poem because it seems that I so rarely do that. It's not that I'm not happy. It's just that I think all emotions are multifaceted. So I like to show all the facets. But I'll read this piece, which actually occurred around Christmas time last year. So that's kind of fun. It's called Meteor Shower because during the time of this, we were supposed to see this incredible meteor shower. And this is what happened. Meteor shower. There is nothing particularly funny about rocks flying through the sky, the raccoon gobbling trash next door, the empty street. But we laugh like it's Christmas, or like those rare summer mornings on the back porch when the sun isn't too hot and everything is possible. There's a meteor shower tonight, and we feel large and happy standing in our driveway. We strain our eyes for something lit up, carrying wishes, or a bonfire of dreams ready to alight from the sky. Maybe, like the man they say rides the night this time of year, we will see something impossible, impossibly generous. It's a blessing to receive a gift, to get something hoped for, something named and exhaled on a piece of space sediment, to get a half hour sitting here next to these loves of mine, to feel the easy way my laugh twinkles out until I'm all sky, mouth open, like this whole world is a big, bright drink. We don't see the meteors falling in a trail of smoke. We wait almost an hour for their shine across the sky. And although we don't see anything but these domesticated stars, there is something singular, maybe the way my sister's eyes hold the star glow, my brother's humming speech, my dad standing there, healthy and smiling among his 4 children, once in a lifetime, these meteors this night. That was a really fun night with my dad and my siblings, waiting for this meteor shower that never really came. But honestly, the gift of that night had nothing to do with those meteors at all. It was just getting to spend time with the people that I love. Yeah, it was awesome. It was an awesome moment, for sure. I think that's one thing the pandemic hopefully is teaching all of us, or reminding all of us, that there are so many amazing moments in our lives that we can still cherish, even though it seems like so much has been taken away. There are still things in which we can find joy. You know, if you've been locked up with your family for the last year, you know, that's not necessarily a thing to begrudge, because that's time that you get to spend with them, you know, that maybe you wouldn't have if the year had been normal, so to speak. But yeah, I guess we'll see if we have maybe a final question. In these last few minutes. Oh, I should say too, I didn't say at the beginning, every poem, which you probably have figured out by now, every poem that I read was written by a Black person. And that is a part of the Lift Every Voice, you know, mission, is to promote African-American poetry. And I think it's really important for us to realize that African-American poetry and history and, you know, whatever else is a part of the American story, and doesn't necessarily need to be trapped in a specific month at all. We can always learn from Black people, you know, through any field at all. Okay.
All right. Hi.
Hi.
What an amazing night. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us. You want to talk a little bit about your process for like choosing poems? I mean,
I can try.
yeah.
It was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Like when I came up with this idea, or when I gave the idea to you, because I think I had seen this done in Miami once for the Oh Miami Festival. But when I came up with the idea, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be able to figure out, stuff for these questions, because they're all gonna be like simple, like happiness or whatever. But these were difficult. So I really just stared into space for a while. For some of them, I was like, okay, who even writes poems? Like my mind drew a complete blank trying to find the perfect piece. But after a while, it kind of started to flow. Some of the ideas came to me, and looking through my own poems also was, interesting to see what I had that could fit. So I did my best. Hopefully, it did something good for everybody.
Yeah, I think it was really, really fabulous. And I would be remiss not to say Ashley has 2 poems in Poetry Magazine in the December 2020 issue. So actually went out to try and find a copy today to hold up, but I don't have it. Do you have one there with you?
I do. It's behind me. So, well,
but yeah. So pick up Poetry Magazine. And where can we find your books locally?
You can find them at Thank You Books. Please go there first before you go anywhere else. Go to Thank You Books, please. You can also order online. I think I'm in some libraries. Also, you're the librarian in the room.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. You're in several libraries, so you can get them there. But if you go to, get that right, Thank You Books, you get a signed copy. So definitely go visit our friends over at Thank You Books in Crestwood and visit your local library.
I do have a copy of that poem if you wanted people to see what it looked like. One of the pieces that the one that he linked. This is it. Exciting.
Yeah, it's so cool. Yeah, so I did post the link in the comments there if y'all want to check it out online, but pick up a copy of this month's Poetry Magazine as well.
Yep. And you can look, like you said, online if you don't want to buy one. But the issue, I think, is really great. So, and they're not that expensive. So.
Yeah, so you've got Magic City Gospel and then Dark Thing are 2 that are published, and then we're looking for Reparations Now next October.
Yep.
And more to talk about. Will you talk about Magic City Poetry Festival? Oh man, did we just freeze?
Uh-oh. I don't know if y'all.
I think we froze up.
Okay, I think we lost Matt. I don't know if y'all can still hear me at all.
Yeah, I dropped out. I was worried I was using up all the bandwidth. But I was saying, would you talk a little bit about Magic City Poetry Festival?
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you. So the Magic City Poetry Festival is a nonprofit that we started a few years back, and our mission is to share poetry, art, and community conversation with the greater Birmingham area, to promote artists and create space for them to do what they do, to pay artists also, to provide funding for them to do programs, and just to be a force of good in the Birmingham area. We are online at www.magiccitypoetryfestival.org. And you can look at some of our past programs. We actually just had, I guess it was last month, time means nothing to me anymore, but last month we had Camille Dungy to give a free nature poetry workshop in partnership with the Birmingham Botanical Gardens, which was just incredible. We inducted our new Eco Poetry Fellow, Salem Green. We just try to do as much as we can for the community and with the community as well, using poetry as our lens, to do all that helping.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you again for all you do for poetry in Birmingham and around the world. You're going worldwide. And thank you so much for this. So as I said earlier, this is the second in our series. We'll have a third Lift Every Voice program, probably late January, sometime February. And so keep a lookout on the library website or our Facebook page for more information about that. And thank y'all so much. Have a great night. Thank you, Ashley. You're an amazing poet, and thank you for sharing your gifts with us.
Thank you.
You have a great night.